That's Hark.
Puff again.
Hi, Hark. Hi. Is this little Puff?
I'm in Shark Bay, Western Australia, with a team of 3 scientists and 1 adorable dolphin calf.
Hi, Puff. What a cutie.
Puff is definitely the youngest and smallest dolphin I've ever seen. It's tucked in next to its mom, moving in tandem with her through these pristine waters, doing all the regular dolphin stuff, but in miniature.
We have Scruff
And
Puff.
Scruff.
Zuff Puff. I know, sorry, Laura.
That's Dr. Stephanie King, the leader of this team, explaining who's who. As we watch, more dolphins arrive, and I can't help but wonder if they're delighting over the new baby, just like we are. This does seem to be some sort of family reunion. You can tell by their names.
So I'm a little confused. The mom is which sound?
So, Scruff was the original female, and she's had 2 daughters, Huff and Tuff. And then Huff's now got a calf called Puff, and Scruff has a new calf called Zuff. So what we do is, like, to make it easier in tracking matrolines, it's either, there's some similarity, right?
Gotcha.
So obviously that one's obvious, Scruff, Huff, Tuff. But it could be something like we have the female Olive, and she's had Pimento and Caper and Martini. And so it becomes really easy to keep track of the family line.
Those names are then shortened to a 3-letter code, which is how the dolphins are identified in scientific publications. But out here in the field, it's a lot easier to use an actual name, like Zeppelin, versus saying ZEP all the time, let alone using some sort of number. Names are just really helpful, and not only for humans, but for the dolphins too. This is what's known as a signature whistle. It's an individual identifier, the dolphin equivalent of a name. These whistles are high and fast, so here's an example with the pitch lowered, so it's easier to hear. In our last visit with these dolphins, we heard about how they use echolocation to navigate and find food. This time, we're going to focus on these signature whistles, one of the sounds that seems to be most important to the dolphins and the most intriguing to us. Welcome to Threshold. I'm Amy Martin, and if we'd released this episode just 1 year earlier than we did, I would have told you that only 3 groups of animals were known to use name-like calls: humans, parrots, and dolphins. But in June of 2024, elephants were added to that list. More on that in a future episode. Then, a few months later, marmosets, small Brazilian monkeys. And as our ability to listen to other species continues to rapidly improve, we'll probably discover many more examples. Can we say that dolphins have language?
I tend to avoid or shy away from using the word language because it's very anthropomorphic. But yes, they have a repertoire of sounds that they may even combine, that's something we're still looking into, to negotiate these complex social relationships, to work together, to look after offspring, to find food. It's complex, right? The communication system. And so you see that there are similarities with the way that we use words that have probably evolved under similar social pressures.
So although it's really fun when we find other creatures using names, the art of true understanding is grounding that sense of connection in a radical humility. Humans and dolphins may both be big-brained mammals with rich, complex social lives, but we live in different mediums. We have different needs, different sensory systems. So we can't assume that they have a word for fin, like we have a word for foot, and that we just need to learn that word or teach them ours. We have to be way more creative and open-minded about it.
I think we're doing them a disservice when we try and compare everything to human language. I like to try and appreciate the complexity of their communication system and understand how and why it's evolved and how they use it to share information with each other.
Like with these signature whistles, Stephanie doesn't take it for granted that a dolphin name is just like a human name. She's trying to understand what having a name even means to them. Rather than starting with ourselves and imposing our human expectations onto the animals, she's trying to drop all preconceptions and let the dolphins lead their own story. In other words, she prioritizes listening over everything else.
Did you hear that, or did I imagine that?
heard that as well. Oh, definitely whistled.
It's my second day in the boat with Dr. Stephanie King, PhD researcher Laura Palmer, and research assistant Millie Clark. The hydrophones are in the water, and the voices of a few of Shark Bay's many resident dolphins are coming through the speaker. Stephanie says when dolphins make these signature whistles, they're calling out their own names, letting other dolphins know who they are.
It's almost like a greeting, right? It's exchanging who's there, who's in the group that I'm joining.
So it's less like, hi, Stephanie, and more like, if it's me to you, going like, Amy, and you're
Exactly.
like, uh-huh.
And that's because, like, if you think about all the animals that are in the bay, all the dolphins, vision's quite restricted underwater, so I can't really see very far. Instead of calling out for who you're looking for, you just broadcast your own identity, and that way you all know who's present, and it's easy to find each other. They sometimes do copy each other's signature whistle, as if addressing, like me saying, Amy. And when they are copied, they call back, they reply as if they've been addressed. And that seems to occur, though, when there's a really strong motivation to reunite. If animals have been separated for a while and they really want to reunite with a particular individual.
Oh, behind us, 180.
Coming this way.
More dolphins are appearing, and the excitement in the boat is rising.
We're more likely to get whistles when animals join. So lots of studies have looked at when whistle rates increase, and it's typically when you get changes in group composition.
Okay, I'm going to take port. I'll take starboard.
And just keep an eye behind as well.
Yeah.
Laura, Millie, Stephanie, and I are standing with our backs to each other in the boat now, all of us peering off in different directions, looking for the quick glint of a shiny dolphin fin.
Oh, and there's an animal ahead of us. Is it coming in? Is it going away?
It's still hard to tell exactly how many dolphins are joining up, or even if they are definitively joining. All we know for sure is that there seem to be a lot of them around.
So we have Moggy and then somebody else with a similar fin.
Yeah.
Oh, it might be Superfly.
Oh.
Stephanie consults a dolphin lookbook they have with them, photos and descriptions of some of the thousands of Shark Bay dolphins, and quickly confirms her guess. This is Superfly, and she has a new calf, which is really exciting, because the heart of this year's research project is something called vocal ontogeny.
By that I mean how calves develop their whistles over time. Do they start quiet? Do they get louder? At what age do they increase the number of whistles they produce? These are the questions that still need to be answered.
Along with many, many more. And that process starts here, in the field, or in this case in a big, sparkling turquoise blue bay, with microphones on and scientists carefully observing everything they see and hear.
We really want to collect as many whistles as we can from different individuals in the population, so we can look at things like how environment influences whistle structure, how social relationships or social complexity influences whistle structure, and repertoire size, so how many whistles individuals produce. And so it's important for us to collect this baseline information.
Important and extremely rare. There's only one other population of wild dolphins on the planet, in Florida, that's been studied as long as the ones here in Shark Bay.
We have information, from birth for many of the animals of who they spend time with, who they associate with, who they're friends with, who they avoid, who they compete with, who they're related to. So we're at the stage now where we are tracking individuals across their entire lives and moving through the next few generations.
All of this information is crucial because even though sound is primary for these animals, every whistle and buzz is produced in a context of relationships and action, not to mention weather and time of day, a whole host of circumstances that almost certainly affect what the sounds actually mean to them. Understanding dolphin communication, or any communication, isn't as simple as just extracting out some sounds and plugging them into an algorithm. It requires understanding the whole animal in a habitat over time. And that's what makes this long-term, comprehensive project in Shark Bay so special.
It really is, I think, the Rosetta Stone of dolphin behavioural ecology, dolphin communication. We've produced so much from this one population and really furthered our knowledge of dolphin behaviour because of this long-term study. You know, you work with them long enough, you recognise them by ear as well.
Oh, really?
And so I can hear a signature whistle and be like, oh, that's CB, or that's Pasta. And even before I see them, or if they're underwater, I know who's around.
That was a whistle. While we've been talking, Laura and Millie have been watching and listening to Superfly and her calf, who are still swimming nearby.
Did you feel that? Yeah, I have. Yeah. Love Superfly and car.
It's up there, Laura.
Okay, they're at 340 degrees.
Stephanie eases the boat forward, and I check in with Laura.
How you feeling?
I feel excited. Hopefully, a couple more.
She's holding her binoculars in one hand and a microphone in the other, which she's using to record voice notes about what we can see from the boat. Later, she'll listen through her hours and hours of recordings and try to match the behaviors she's observed visually with the sounds the dolphins are making. So getting these recordings of whistles is a little bit like collecting bits of treasure, which she'll take out later to examine and marvel over and learn from.
Oh,
Okay, here they are. Cool. They're about 320 degrees.
Yes! That's louder as well.
So good. Love these guys. Superfly and calf are my favourite. I've said that about every dolphin so far. Yeah, up and then down whistle. Still going.
I know it's hard to hear, but the dolphins are whistling. A lot.
Still going.
We know dolphins use signature whistles to identify each other, but there could be all sorts of other information encoded in each sound as well.
It's not just about learning the sounds that other animals produce, but using the sounds that are best suited to the environment that you're in. So, for example, in the southern part of the habitat, it's a bit louder and whistles don't travel as far.
It's louder not because of human-made noise, but because of differences in the shape of the underwater terrain, and because there are more snapping shrimp in the southern part of the bay. Stephanie says the dolphins there tend to use shorter, lower whistles, because those kinds of sounds are easier to hear in that habitat.
And so in the northern part of the habitat, we predicted animals would use much higher frequencies, longer whistles, more modulated whistles. And we found that that's the case.
By more modulated, Stephanie means that the whistle has more changes of pitch. It might go up and down a few times, like this, versus a simpler structure, like this. And because these differences between whistles are connected to the geography of the bay, it could be that when two dolphins meet, they can both get a sense of where the other's from. The way I can hear immediately that Stephanie's from the UK, and she can hear that I'm from the US.
You know, I think dialects is a good way of looking at it. You can travel to a different city or a different state, and people can sound a little bit different, but we communicate fine. We don't even think about it. We're using the same words, right? We understand each other.
But if a non-English speaker were listening into us, some of the differences in how we talk could be very confusing. In some cases, it might be hard to sort out what is a difference in dialect or accent and what's an entirely different word. And this is just one example of the huge variety of factors, known and unknown, that these scientists are dealing with as they try to understand dolphin communication. Each signature whistle contains a world of fascinating questions, and so does each dolphin.
They're incredibly smart. It's incredibly important to conserve them.
I'm talking with Laura in the Shark Bay Research Station at the end of a long day out in the boat collecting sounds.
The more that we can show and the more that we can inspire people to care about them and the marine environment in general, the better for the world, fighting the climate crisis, everything.
I was thinking today, we have this whole life out here in the air on the surface, and then they have this whole life under the water, and then there's this thin layer where we meet, where they come up to get the air, and we ride on the water. And in that little tiny space of interaction, there's so much that can happen in terms of observation and connection. And yet it's also so mysterious because then they disappear again into their world.
Exactly. It is unknown to us, but sound allows us to tap into that a little bit. You suddenly start hearing loads of whistles and you look around and you might see that there's another group on the periphery or coming in or something like that. You've dropped into their world a little bit more. When you're with them and you observe how complex their behaviours can be and how much is probably going on beneath the surface, I'm often in awe.
We'll have more after this short break.
There isn't one single key to a happy life. Our happiness comes from many things, like connecting with others, how we treat ourselves, and how we relate to the natural world around us. And there are practices that have been shown in the lab to help us get better at these things. I'm Dacher Keltner, psychologist at UC Berkeley. Join me on the Science of Happiness podcast as we explore these practices. In each episode, guests from all walks of life give a practice a try. And then we hear from experts about why they work. Find the Science of Happiness wherever you get your podcasts.
On Living Planet, we've got questions.
Is anyone trying to clean up this mess?
Big questions.
Should we really be sinking our money into this?
Questions that get to the bottom of things.
How much CO2 does a tree absorb anyway?
Your questions.
How often do you think we should use the reusable cups to compensate for the paper ones?
But don't worry, we've got answers too. Answers to help you navigate some of the biggest environmental issues of our time.
That's on Living Planet.
Find us wherever you get podcasts.
What's so fascinating about dolphins is they're vocal production learners, which means they're not born with a set repertoire of sounds. They learn everything, like we do, right? We're not born with a language, we learn it, we can learn new languages.
Welcome back to Threshold. I'm Amy Martin, and I'm on land now, talking with Dr. Stephanie King about how dolphins get their names.
Anecdotally, from what I've seen of young animals, particularly in the first couple of months, they're starting to learn to produce whistles. It will be very much influenced by the whistles they hear in their environment. They'll copy. So they're copying sounds that they hear and learning to produce these whistles.
Which also speaks to how crucial the acoustics are for them.
Exactly. It's far more important than anything else. So that's something that they need to learn and develop fairly quickly.
Little Puff is probably already trying to make a signature whistle, but it'll take some practice. Stephanie says just like human babies have to babble before they can talk, young dolphins have to experiment with whistling before they can really do it.
They certainly don't sound like full adult whistles. There's a bit more vibration. They're learning how to produce these, but it's just a few months, and then they're producing these nice regular whistles.
I wondered if the calves end up creating whistles that are variants of their mom's names. Like, if she's Mary, is the calf more likely to be named Carrie or Larry? But Stephanie said it's more like the opposite of that.
What we find typically is that calves tend to produce something that's different to the sounds they hear. Like it's modeled on the population, but something that's different to the animals it interacts with regularly. And that makes sense because you want to stand out, because these signature whistles are all about individual identity, right?
And while baby is learning, mom is talking.
I have done some studies earlier in my career where I looked at the vocal behaviour of the mother just before she gave birth and then after giving birth. And that's interesting because we have a species that when the young's born, the calf has to be very mobile right, to stay with the mum, and there's a risk of separation. And so what the mother does is she increases her signature whistle production nearly tenfold after the birth of the calf for the first 2 to 3 weeks. So she's whistling all the time, and that way the calf recognises its mum, and it knows when it hears that whistle, it approaches because that's its mum, and that makes sure that if there is a separation, the calf can find the mum again.
We're back in the boat, hours after Huff and Puff and all the other Uffs have dispersed, and Stephanie's looking intently through her binoculars.
Got something. But it's quite far.
I saw splashing. See it? See it? Yes. Someone coming in. Yes. Yes.
Laura had explained to me earlier that as a scientist and as a Brit, she was contractually obligated to contain her emotions. But sometimes, thankfully, she couldn't help herself.
Oh, this is exciting.
Okay, what's happening?
Okay, so in the very distance, several hundred meters away, we've seen dolphins coming in. So this is a potential join between different groups. We need to confirm who's involved still. But this is exciting. It normally initiates vocalizations like whistles and things.
This is like being with the best dolphin hunters in the world, but doing the coolest kind of hunting. And when we're on the scent, so to speak, they're like leaning forward, looking through their binoculars. It's this exciting feeling of pursuit, but then when we get there, it's just be calm, be quiet, hold back, watch, observe, photograph, take notes.
Yeah, there's a couple up. Yeah, there's a few up there. There's two, at least 3, so we'll keep going. Yeah, there we go. See again the glint. Woo!
Good afternoon.
Some jumping happening.
And we still have
Is it
a
juicy?
distant animal at about 10 degrees.
No, Zeppelin.
Oh, Zeppelin.
And
Okay.
Juicy.
Zeppelin's at 20
So she has joined.
and Juicy, so there was a
Do you want to
join.
get a quick picture?
Oh, loads of splashing up there.
Oh yeah.
There was a full-on leap. Ah!
This is so cool. Suddenly, there are dolphins everywhere.
There's 3 there now.
And there's more further out. The splashing was further out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, 5. Jungle, Zeppelin just here.
Okay, so between 3:20.
I'm going to switch off.
We've got Jungle and Zeppelin on a starboard
Do you want to
side
turn up?
and the front starboard quarter.
Stephanie turns the boat engine off, and Laura switches the speaker on.
It's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen. 10 degrees. Woo!
How's whistle you've had?
Composure, that was an amazing whistle. That's going in the analysis.
After a while, some of the dolphins who've joined up swim off, and those that stay go into relaxation mode, that snagging that Stephanie told us about last time, where they just bob quietly at the surface together.
Right now they're quite tight, they're relaxed, they're resting, they know who's there, but all it takes is for them to change behaviour and spread out and start foraging, and then they'll whistle to maintain contact, to come upon another individual or group of animals and to start whistling to exchange information. So we're just waiting for the right context, and you really have to be patient. You know, it is a privilege to observe the animals and their behaviour. You know, we're spending time in their world, and so we just have to take a step back and watch and carefully observe and be patient. And, you know, it can pay dividends when you get a good context and they start vocalising like crazy, and then you can get a great sample size.
And there are worse places to be.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the view.
It's just clear blue water, smooth as glass, as far as the eye can see. As we've heard about in previous episodes this season, new technologies are transforming the way we can listen to the natural world, and Stephanie embraces these tools. But she also says there is nothing that can replace old school, in-person field work. Just being physically present with the animals in their habitat, watching and listening.
When you spend so much time with the animals, you really see there are such clear differences in behavior between individuals, you know, and you do get to know them as individuals.
And you also get to know things about yourself, to feel the dolphins working back on you as the observer. Even in my short time in Shark Bay, I felt the experience of spending long days focusing all my energy on another species, changing me a little bit. It was all about surrendering my own agenda and adapting to their pace, their rhythm, challenging myself to drop into a deeper and deeper level of attunement.
A mentor of mine once said that to be a good animal behaviorist, you have to have patience and an eye for detail and also empathy. And I think that's absolutely true. And I think I care about studying these animals because I also have empathy for them. And I want to understand the intricacies of their lives and how they negotiate them. What does it mean to be a dolphin, you know?
Answering that question isn't something that happens through one study or one field season or even one human lifetime. This is a long-term bridge-building process that requires the effort of many minds over generations. It's exciting to dream about what it would be like if we were ever able to cross that bridge and truly comprehend what dolphins are saying to each other. But maybe the most important point of all this work isn't waiting for us in some distant future when we can sit around chatting with animals. Maybe it's about what happens to us along the way, how we're changed by the process of learning to listen to them.
Whistles!
This episode of Threshold was written, reported, and produced by me, Amy Martin, with help from Erica Janik and Sam Moore. Music by Todd Sikafus. Post-production by Alan Douches. Fact-checking by Sam Moore. Special thanks to Stephanie King and Laura Palmer for many of the dolphin sounds you heard in this episode. This show is made by Oracle Productions, a nonprofit organization powered by listener donations. Deneen Weisky is our executive director. You can find out more about our show at thresholdpodcast.org.
Hey friends, we have got another way for you to connect with us here at Threshold. It's our email newsletter. By signing up, you'll stay updated on new episodes of the show and dive deeper into the fascinating sounds you're hearing in our latest season, Hark. From time to time, we'll also share a behind-the-scenes look at how we make the show, plus recommendations from our team on what else we're reading, watching, and listening to. Signing up is easy. Just head over to thresholdpodcast.org or click the link in our show notes. We are so grateful you're part of this community, one that's truly curious about the world around us. And as always, Thank you so much for listening.